let's talk about adding and subtracting fractions. Sometimes you might face a problem where you have to use both adding and subtracting fractions. Let's look at this context together. It says, Mrs. Gorham is painting her house. She has 9/10 gallon of paint. She uses 2/3 gallon in the living room and 1/5 gallon in the office. How much paint will she have left over? Whenever you're faced with a word problem like this, I want you to visualize it in your head. Imagine there's a gallon of paint, and some of it's already been used. We don't have a whole gallon of paint, but it's really close to a whole gallon. It's very full. 9/10 of that paint is still in the can. Then I use some of that paint, 2/3 of that gallon, to paint my living room. Then I use a little bit more, 1/5 of a gallon, to paint my office. When I'm finished, I have a little bit of paint left over in the can, but surely it's not very much. There is definitely more than one way to solve this problem. This is how I would think about this problem. Thinking about this total, I have a total of 9/10 of a gallon of paint, and I use 2/3 gallon of this paint. That means that I'm going to subtract it. I'm going to use it. It's going to go away. This is what I do first. Let's say I paint the living room first. I'm going to put that in parentheses because parentheses mean do this first. Then, after I'm finished painting the living room, then I use another 1/5 gallon of paint. I'm going to find how much paint I have left over after painting the living room. Then I'm going to subtract another 1/5 of a gallon because that's what I use in the office. That's going to tell me how much paint I have left over. I'm thinking about my knowledge of subtracting fractions, and I notice here I have different sized pieces. In fact, I have different sized pieces on each of these fractions. Right now, I'm only going to focus right here because I'm going to do parentheses tell me to do first. I'm looking at these denominators. I see tenths and thirds. I'm going to use the common denominator of 30ths here. If I wasn't confident that 30ths was my best option, I could go off to the side and I could list the multiples of 10 and I could list the multiples of 3. And when I do that, I would find that 30ths is my best choice. Okay, I don't have much space in here, but I'm thinking, okay, what did I do to this denominator to make it 30? Well, I know that 10 times 3 equals 30. And since I did times 3 on the bottom, I'm going to do times 3 on the top. 9 times 3 is 27. 9/10 is equivalent to 27 30ths. I'm going to go ahead and write my subtraction sign in here so I don't forget. Here I have thirds. To make those 30ths, I multiplied by 10. And if I multiply by 10 on the bottom, I'm going to multiply by 10 on the top. 2 times 10 is 20. 2/3 is equivalent to 20 30ths. Now that I have the same size pieces, it's much easier for me to subtract. 27 minus 20 is 7. Here's 27 pieces. I'm taking away 20 pieces. I'm left with 7 pieces, and all of those pieces are the size of 30ths. Now I can't forget that this is the amount of paint that's left over after the living room. Then, according to my situation up top, I used another 1/5 gallon in my office. So here, I'm going to bring down that minus 1/5. Oh, and I see I don't have the same size pieces yet again. I have 30ths over here, and I have fifths over here. I know a multiplication fact that I can take 5, multiply it by something to get 30ths. I know that 5 times 6 gives me 30ths. So to make this an equivalent fraction, I'm going to multiply times 6 on the numerator as well. And 1 times 6 is 6. 1/5 is equivalent to 6 30ths. Here, this 7/30, it's already 30ths. There's my common denominator. So all of these pieces are the size of 30ths. There were 7 pieces. I'm taking away 8 pieces. I'm left with 1 piece. So I started with 9/10 of a gallon of paint. I subtracted the 2/3 gallons and ended up with 7/30 gallon of paint. Then I used another 1/5 gallon of paint and I was left with 1/3 gallon. This is one way to solve this problem. Another way to think about this problem would be to find the total amount of paint that was used and then subtract that from the total. So the total amount of paint that I started with was 9/10 of a gallon. And I used some of that paint. That tells me that I'm going to be using subtraction as my operation here. But I used 2/3 and I used 1/5 of a gallon. So I could combine the 1/5 and the 2/3 together first to find the total amount of paint that was used. This 2/3 plus the 1/5 gallon of paint will tell me the total amount that was used, but I have to make sure that I know to do that part first. I'm going to put that in parentheses to show that I need to do that first. Looking here at the 2/3 plus the 1/5, this is a simple addition equation. I notice that I don't have the same sized pieces, so I have to find a common denominator. My best choice here would be to use 15ths as my common denominator. To make this 2/3 15ths, I need to multiply by 5/5. 3 times 5 gave me 15 in my denominator. 2 times 5 gives me 10 in my numerator. To make the 1/5 15ths, I need to multiply by 3/3. Squeeze that in my parentheses there. For the denominator, 5 times 3 is 15. On the numerator, 1 times 3 is 3. I've made equivalent fractions. 2/3 plus 1/5 is the same thing as saying 10/15ths plus 3/15ths. I'm going to keep those in parentheses. I'm going to go ahead and bring this 9/10ths down. Okay, when I add these together, they're all the size of 15ths. I have 10 pieces plus 3 more pieces. That's 13/15ths. Let's think about what this means for a second. This means that in the living room and the office, I used a total of 13/15ths gallons of paint. I started with 9/10ths gallons of paint, so I need to subtract the total amount that I used to see what I have left over. I'm noticing again that I do not have the same sized pieces, so I must find a common denominator. I'm going to choose the denominator of 30ths here. Choosing 30ths because I know that 10 times 3 gives me 30 and 15 times 2 gives me 30. 30 is a common multiple of both denominators. I'm going to write my multiplication out to the left side here. To get this tenths to 30ths, I need to multiply by 3/3. 3 times 10 gave me 30. 3 times 9 gives me 27. I'm going to come over here to my 13/15ths. I need to multiply by 2 halves. 15 times 2 is 30, and 13 times 2, 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 1 is 2. It gives me 26. Now I have 27/30ths minus 26/30ths. That tells me that there's 1/30th gallon of paint left over. Here you can see the 2 different ways that we solved this problem. Let's look at one more example together. Here I have 7/8 plus 1/12 minus 1/2. Here we are just given an expression. We're not given a situation or a word problem. And I also notice that there are no parentheses. Parentheses tell me to do this first. If I don't have any parentheses with adding and subtracting, I'm just going to work my way from left to right. I'm going to start here. When I do see parentheses, I know that parentheses mean do this first. So whatever's in the parentheses, I must solve that first before moving on to the rest of the expression. First, I'm going to add 7/8 plus 1/12. I notice these aren't the same size pieces, so I must find a common denominator. In this case, I'm going to use the denominator of 20/4. Again, if you're not confident in finding common denominators, go watch my video that's focused on common denominators. To make the 7/8 20/4, I'm going to multiply by 3/3 because 8 times 3 gives me 24 and 7 times 3 is 21. 7/8 is equivalent to 21/24. Over here on my 1/12, I'm going to multiply by 2 halves. 2 times 12 is 24. 2 times 1 is 2. I'm going to add 21/24 plus 2/24. That gives me a total of 23/24. And I can't forget this little guy out here. I have to go back and also subtract this 1/2. I need to find common denominators. Ooh, I know a fact where I can change halves, or this 2, into 20/4. 2 times 12 equals 20/4, so I'm going to multiply by 12 on the top as well, and 1 times 12 is 12. So now I am left with 23/24 minus 12/24. I have the same size pieces here, so my denominator is going to stay 20/4, and 23 minus 12 equals 11. 7/8 plus 1/12 minus 1/2 equals 11/24. Remember that when you are adding or subtracting fractions, you must find common denominators.